everyone, and welcome to My Destiny Designer. Wake Up, You've Got This podcast. So this podcast is all about helping and inspiring people to wake up and to see that they've actually got everything that they need to be all that they ever want to be within them. And today we have a very special guest in the name of Kim Serafini. And I've known Kim for quite a lot of years, probably ever since I've been on the coast, so 2010. And in that time, I've seen Kim do some amazing things. And so I'm going to introduce her and get her to share some of those amazing things with us today. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much, Vickie. What an honour, privilege and pleasure to be here.
Oh, we are very honoured to have you. So, Kim, tell us a little bit about your business and what you have been doing over the last couple of years, because I know that even though you live locally here on the Sunshine Coast, your business is very international. So tell us more about that.
Oh, where do you begin? Other than, so I was one of those very fortunate young women. I got a great opportunity to go to business school, graduated, had a really successful career in change management consulting in mergers and acquisitions, large corporate organisational change programs in London and New York. That actually did set the stage for where I am at now. Interestingly, of course, I could never have known that. So after many years living abroad, I actually returned to Australia, but I did so having gone back to study and qualified as what we in Australia call an osteopath, and in the UK we call essentially a sports therapist, a rehabilitation therapist. And that led me, and I think that this is about when we met, to creating a business where I had distributorships in India and the Middle East and Asia for something called lithos therapy. So I'm very famous for being the woman who invented what is now known as hot stone massage. And over around about 8 years, I trained nearly 5,000 therapists, including like the lecturers at the Australasian College of Natural Therapies and lots of Sedesco beauty schools. And so a lot of therapists actually learned about that. What that meant for me as a human being was that I got to go and train Ayurvedic doctors and physiotherapists and naturopaths, and I learned so much more from them than, of course, I was teaching. And that probably is where I really started to dive deep into my spiritual journey. It was in the Himalayas, as they call them, at Ananda, which is this exquisite 6-star health retreat, where looking out over the Himalayas, as corny as this sounds, is where I had my epiphany. And I kind of downloaded, in a very divine sense, what then became the bestseller, I'm Grateful for Life. So that was really in its full swing when I first met you. But the link was thousands of people that I had seen on essentially a treatment table as a therapist, and we were trying to heal them physically, and yet my soul or my spirit or my intellect or my higher self knew it had to be emotional, it had to be mental, and it had to be the combination of both that led to the physical manifestation of some of these issues, apart from where there'd been an actual accident. And for those who are really spiritual, they believe there are no accidents and it's all serendipity and synchronicity and it's all coincidence. Not. So where I'm at now is really, I'm a nerd, I'm a geek. I've done an enormous amount of research, and over the last couple of years, I've been seriously blessed to meet this man named Sean Acor, who was very famous out of Harvard University, and he did the scientific research on what is now known as Positive Prime, this neuroscience, positive psychology software that I created. And he actually was the one that made sure it was integrated into the Oprah Winfrey Science of Happiness course. And if that hadn't have happened, I wouldn't have really kind of up-leveled myself to then go and work with people like Jack Canfield from Chicken Soup for the Soul and the Success Principles, or say Christine Carlson from Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. So I am now well known as like the global expert or the international, leading light in a science of positive priming, which is how does our brain and our mind, so neuroscience and psychology, how does it mix and merge in such a way that our endocrine system is impacted. So we create different hormones by the thoughts that we think. And what does the thoughts that we think mean as compared to the way that our brain actually works physiologically? Because a lot of people confuse both the brain and the mind, thinking that they're the same thing. So without me really being decisive about this being my journey, it's not like I sat down and thought, oh, I'll be so clever that I'll create a software or a piece of technology that will eventually be part of Oprah Winfrey's programs. No, it's just I'm totally passionate. I'm on purpose. I'm every day thinking about how can I contribute more to more people to make them happier and healthier.
Yep.
And how do we make our brains work in such a way? And then how do we have our minds working in total symphony so that together we are healthier? And positive priming as a science is really, really interesting because we've only just recently developed the actual instruments that can measure brainwave activity from what we call EEG devices that don't have any interference artifacts. So you can actually now witness what happens to people in real environments as they're going about a real day's work rather than being in a lab environment where there's no semblance of what goes on.
Kim, someone, sort of listening to this podcast and, hearing even so far as what you've already said, they might be thinking, what exactly is positive priming?
What exactly is positive priming? It's the way to instruct your mind to work in such a way that it impacts your brain. I'll give you a really interesting example. So you facilitate, and we do via a tool. And the tool is you watch what I like to describe a really super sophisticated, fancy slideshow, except it's not a slideshow, but it has 1,000 frames and every single one is carefully curated for specific reasons. And we'll give you a certain number of smiles to look at, but scientifically they're Duchenne smiles because the mirror neurons, so the retina in your eyes, actually processes the information. It sends a message to your mirror neurons, which are up here. It's kind of where your horns grow or where your halo sits.
Yeah.
And that actually changes the way that your brain's operating. You become more efficient and effective of lots of things, creativity, decision-making, all sorts of out-of-the-box thinking, but it sends messages to your actual endocrine system. So hormonally, you produce more serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin, these really fantastic, healthy, feel-good hormones. And that has a whole heap of other cascading ripple effects. And we do that by showing you a special type of smile called a Duchenne smile. That's one part of a formula, and in our formula we have around about 17 moving pieces, and so that's the proprietary bit that we put together and we've scientifically tested. So smiles is one of them. Another one of them is green tree canopy. So we know if we show you a photograph, this research was done at the University of California, San Francisco, and 70% of that photograph actually has tree canopy, green tree canopy. Do you know your immune system functions differently, and cytokine, which is a protein, production changes and you actually become healthier?
Wow.
Right? So
That's
people used to think, like grounding and going out and spending time in nature. People used to think
it's a thing.
It is a thing.
I know.
But they were like, it only happens if you actually are out walking in the woods. I can show you
because your mind doesn't know the difference.
No, right. So you get this.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's so good.
Vickie, not very many people are at your level either who just instantly understand what's going on and why and how. What that means though is that I've teamed up with lots of people. There's a current research professor at QUT here in Queensland, amazing woman. She just won a Lifetime Achievement Award. She's in her 50s. How that's even possible. She's super brilliant. But she ran a lab actually for the University of California in San Francisco. Brilliant. Originally in her career, she was a pharmacist. And what's amazing is that I now get to talk to these kinds of people, and this is how I know that I'm a little bit different, because I'm not a scientist, but I can have these kinds of conversations with research scientists. I'm not actually a psychologist, but interestingly enough, it I think means I have some objectivity and I can see things from a different perspective.
Yep.
And I'm much more driven to how do we make a technology that physically works within 3 minutes for real people with real lives, with real challenges and real problems, which are people like you and me. Like we have curveballs all the time. And so for me, it's all about what's practical, what's relevant, what's useful, what's actually beneficial for us, you know, for those of us who aren't flying first class all over the world, or even if I do, I still wouldn't, because I would prefer to donate the money, but that's a whole other thing. But I can now have conversations with Professor Selena Bartlett, and what's amazing is not only does she really respect me, she really respects the technology that I've created.
Yep.
And Vickie, 5 or 10 years ago, I could never have had that land in my heart.
Yeah.
And for there to be no ego around that, so that I don't say that to impress you, but to impress upon you who we become in the journey of following our dreams is astonishing, right? And that she recognises there's something of value there.
Yeah. And it's not all woo-woo like it would have been 10 years ago.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's just so meaningful and significant, and continues when I'm feeling a bit like, whoa, I've got so much work on, or whoa, we've now got like tens of thousands of people in our community.
Yep. And talk me through, so some of the people listening might like to know, what kind of impact does a 3-minute, thing like this have?
A visual intervention.
In 3 minutes. Yeah. So let's talk about the actual impact that it might have for someone.
Okay, well, scientifically, we absolutely know for a fact that the impact, the effects last for 6 to 8 hours. Yeah. Now, I need to put that into context for people, because when we started to do this research, the reason why Oprah, who's now worth, I read yesterday in the Time magazine, $2.6 billion, her organisation is so vast, and the number of hoops you need to jump through to actually achieve what we did is actually rather incredible, because we were stopped at 1,000 different steps by all sorts of legals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and she will not have anything involved in the Oprah Winfrey Network that hasn't been scientifically validated, and I didn't know that, right? So we were lucky we were forced through efficacy testing to prove that it worked, but we didn't even know why, right? Seriously, for all the pieces to come together was just amazing. So a short-term scientific effect means that it wears off after 2 to 4 hours, all right? So that's your Panadol or your whatever. A long-term scientific impact is actually infinitely more difficult to achieve, and it means the potential of the possibilities are just way beyond our wildest imagination. I will tell you, I got the email from Sean Achor, and if you go and Google his TED Talk, Sean's Shawn, Achor, Achor, in the top 10 business talks of all time in TED, he's up there, right? He writes me one line in one email: Kim, you have a long-term effect, I'm all in. He was like, how did you do it? I don't know. So part of my message, right, is
I'm so happy for you.
Follow your instincts.
Yeah.
There is magic. There really is. There is a destiny, a dharma. And when you're focused, I believe, only on what's the good you can do for somebody else, and you have really high standards and you're pursuing excellence and you want that formula to be precise because you want to have some integrity around that, keep going.
Yeah.
Because, Vickie, so many people said to me, oh, surely you don't need 1,000 frames. Yes, we need 1,000 frames because your brain causes your mind to have about 50,000 thoughts a day, right? We know from the science that around about 30 to 50% of them are automatic negative thoughts. If you're really negative, it's about 80%. That means that we have thousands of thoughts a day that don't support us, that don't uplift us.
And the research is actually that our brains are wired 4 times more towards the negative than the positive. So this is of course, going,
Totally.
you know, like it's just gold.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so I say, look, a lot of people use our technology just as a vision board, right? Because you can actually personalize it, so you can upload all your own personal photographs. Some people use it as a gratitude journal, so they upload photographs of highlights of their life just to remind them how incredibly thankful they are.
Yeah, and lucky.
Yeah, totally. I do both, actually.
Yep.
But you need that magnitude, because you're actually overcoming essentially this basic wiring that we have to protect ourselves and to survive. And most of us don't like change for the whole reptilian brain point of view, because anything that's new is going to challenge us. Because back when we were running away from the saber-toothed tiger, if we didn't recognize something as familiar, we automatically had to assume it was going to kill us.
Out of fear.
Right?
Yep.
So it's funny, because people used to say to me, our technology, when you watch one of these, we call them sessions, they're not a movie file, they're not an MP4, they're not an audio file, they're not an MP3, they're our own technology, right? So they sit inside this player, and every single time you press play every day, it reshuffles the deck of cards, if you can imagine that, and it shows 1,000 frames in a different order. And all of these software engineers were saying to me, surely that's not necessary. And I'm like, please don't question that. It's absolutely essential in order for the science to work, because we cannot have neuroplasticity if we don't have these incredibly different ways of having the mind see a stimulus and then a different stimulus either side. So let's just say you were triggered by cats or dogs, something attacked you and you have this reaction.
I'll go snakes.
Okay, snakes. Perfect example, me too.
Yeah.
Even though where we live, there are certainly our fair share of the nasty ones too. But anyway, so a snake. But let's just say you have this incredible memory and an association that is truly uplifting of Paris, and I show you a photograph of the Eiffel Tower. And then let's just say that you were given roses by your beautiful other half, and you have this association of the high vibration of roses. Well, if I show you 16 images and the middle one is the trigger that you have, it actually, through associative conditioning, it softens the blow, per se, of the snake. So I can actually help your brain to completely restructure your association with the things that trigger you. Now, every single time you watch that every day for 30 days, if I reshuffle the cards and that snake now appears inside 16 different images on either side, you collapse that in your mind. You don't even know you do this, and you create a theme. So you will layer in new emotional overlays to the thing that before used to upset you, right? There's a lot of this science used for lots of different reasons, and there are clinical implications for what we're doing, but we haven't really gone down that path yet. We're very caught up in the work that we're doing in large organisations with change management programs, with employees, and vision and cultures. Which makes sense
with your background.
It kind of does.
Yeah.
And then because of my health and wellbeing background, I'm much more focused on. We now have a certification program. So, in fact, it's interesting because I know you're an ICF coach. So in America, those chapters have actually been inviting me to go and speak at their annual conferences for ICF.
Yes.
Interesting.
Awesome.
So what I want everybody to know is you can literally just go and create a free account. It's free for everybody on the planet. You're automatically given what we call credits, which is our currency inside. And you can use your credits inside the shop, and you can buy any piece of content that serves you. So that might be about relationships or finances or whatever. And lots of the people who have contributed are New York Times bestselling authors and amazing people, people we love and respect. And also lots of incredible unknowns who are still remarkable executive coaches or physiotherapists or psychologists or social workers and so forth. Then people can become a subscribed member, which means they can actually use the software and personalize it.
Yep.
But we have stories of seriously hundreds of people who have created an account and they've used their 120 credits to buy a standard piece of content out of the shop. And then they share that with somebody else. And every time they share it, they actually earn more credits for themselves through a referral program.
Good idea.
Beautiful idea. And then
Bingo.
Every time they watch it, they also earn credits, which of course is great from a compliance point of view for those of us who are coaches, right? So compliance is always the biggest issue for any health professional.
How do we get them to do it?
Yes, do it.
Yeah.
And people will do it because they want that extra session.
Yeah, love it.
And so interestingly enough, we do actually have a community of people who watch different sessions whilst they're undergoing chemotherapy, right? Because they're stuck somewhere for hours and hours, and they know that the quality of our thoughts impact the way that our bodies repair themselves,
Mind
cleanse
heals
themselves.
the body.
Totally, right?
I love it.
So I'm kind of at that stage where I'm so excited and I'm so incredibly grateful that I get to do this work. I'm so proud of the professionals that I've been certifying. They're all amazing psychologists. They've got their own PhDs in their own areas, but I think that they can recognise this is a tool they can leverage in their own practice for their own reasons in their own way. And so all of a sudden I'm like this technology software founder and I'm dealing with software engineers. And seriously, Vickie, it's so far out of my comfort zone, you have no idea. But like every day is me traversing some terrain I've never come across before and constantly dealing with new issues like what are we doing with virtual reality? How are we having machine learning algorithms impact the way that our software is going to link with some kind of wearable technology? And I'm like, whoa.
Let me catch up here.
Breathe deep, Kim. Just breathe.
So if you were to give our listeners a tip or a tool or a lesson or a learning or a gift that you would like to impart to them, what might that be? Like, is there something that you were talking before about, and obviously the name of our podcast is Wake Up, You've Got This. So, what was something that you suddenly like woke up and got this and would be happy to share?
Oh, do you know what? There's about 1,000 things on that list. One of the important things is keep going, right? Nothing replaces tenacity, perseverance and grit. I love that TED Talk actually about grit and Angela Duckworth. I would also keep going and be gentle on yourself. Like I'm really quite ambitious and driven, and yet I'm so much calmer and more gentle and graceful these days. And somewhere I must have known that all I needed to do was stay in the game, just keep moving forward. I'm not saying that it's been a pretty journey, because in some instances I've had some extraordinary challenges on this journey. A lot of my own personal situations. What I have developed is resilience. And I'm a smart woman, clearly I'm not silly or stupid, even though sometimes I do silly things and I am really stupid in the way that I actually make mistakes, right? But there's a part of me differentiating these days between what my behaviour is and who I am at my core, right? Who am I just am truly a loving human being. I really want to put my head on the pillow every night and feel a peace in my soul, peace of mind. I want to feel peaceful in my body and tranquil. I want that for everyone. And whatever it is that we need to do to just keep reminding ourselves to come from a compassionate place towards ourselves and each other.
Yeah.
And somehow we will gather enough really amazing, fantastic friends who will pick us up when we trip over. So I want to say, get yourself really a rather exquisite group of supportive friends who actually want what is best in the interests of your higher self, not necessarily your ego self, who will make a stand for you, but who are going to love you no matter what.
Yeah.
And it's not just your personal girlfriends, if you're a female, it's who can you have in your life in business who will be that loving towards you. Even those of us who spend a lot of time in the corporate world, you kind of think that you need to divorce yourself of really loving friendships because exist in either political or scientific or corporate environment. It's just not the truth.
No, the opposite is true.
Totally.
Yeah.
The other thing I think I've learned is to stand up for myself. So on this journey, and this is back, actually, I think of Selena Bartlett, this woman at QT I'm telling you about. She's not jealous, and other people have been really jealous of what I created.
Yep.
She is so much of her own mature woman. She's really proud of me and she builds me up. And it's interesting because it's taken me a long time to develop a group of people for whom we are that to each other.
Yep.
Because that's pretty hard.
Yep. Because for a lot of, not just women, people, humans, we are actually driven by ego until we're not. And then when we're not, we see the others that are not. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
I love it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and you know what? And have some fun. So there were years when I thought that I wasn't allowed to just let my hair down, and like part of the reason why I now do curly hair as well as like my straight back
and it looks beautiful.
It just reminds me to be playful.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah,
just lighten up, Kim. It's going to be all okay. I didn't know in some of my darkest moments that it really would be all okay. And what I have noticed over the last year or two is really dark moments have arisen, and somehow I've been able to soothe myself and know it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really is.
And that's what I love, that saying, you know, everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's just not the end. I love that saying.
It's so good, isn't it?
And that obviously resonates with you too. So Kim, if someone out there was kind of thinking, you know, how do I get this thing called life? You know, I need to change so that I can, you know, wake up myself and get this. What advice would you give them as to how they might put themselves on that track of, you know, more joy, more happiness, more love?
Do you know, I think learning and giving your time to what I would call mindful moments of reflection, and then deciding for yourself how you're going to apply what it is that is developing or growing within you. I am an advocate of coaching. Get really good quality coaches. It does certainly compress the amount of time that it takes you to learn some of these profound life lessons. Mm-hmm. Know that the lessons that you get to learn on the journey are going to become a lot more complex, and you will be ready for them if you actually do your homework. So, you know, dive into the personal development, the self-improvement. I would say do everything that you can to make sure that you're healthy, because it will allow you to deal with anything that comes your way with more grace and ease and speed. My beautiful other half very unexpectedly had a heart episode and then a coronary bypass ×4, and
Fairly
he's young
recently.
and fit. And, you know, all of the specialists and the nurses at the time, they said to me, you know, Kim, he's so lucky because he's really fit, right? So even though he was faced with something legitimately life-threatening, the reality is he was fit, and he has returned to being fit in quite a short period of time. That surgery, they do know medically, does damage the brain and actually interrupts the connections between the heart and the brain. And so brain training is necessary, and there are definitely some things that he's been doing. It's kind of ironic that he lives in the house where we created a brain training tech. You know, like, hello, that's a little too close for comfort.
There are no accidents.
None whatsoever. So I have actually probably come to this place where I'm getting fitter. I'm actually doing more exercise. I'm making time for it. If anybody wants to go on this journey, of course I'm going to say sign up for Positive Prime. I would recommend that you go for membership and you upload your own photographs as well. I really do believe, and the science says so, but I don't want you to think that I'm trying to sell you something here when I say, if you watch one of these sessions, and I'll give you an example. Let's just say it's Jack Canfield's The Success Principles. It's like Jack is sitting on your shoulder and he is coaching you because you are seeing his face, and the words inside these images are all the essence of his key messages, right? So they're incredible pieces of wisdom and insight and advice. So interestingly, you could dive into that, but if you see photographs of yourself in there, your identity actually gets entwined with the message, and it then becomes you. There is a part of our technology which is about speed, so you can watch 1,000 frames inside 3 minutes, or you can actually slow it down and you can watch it over an entire 60 minutes. You actually get to decide what the runtime is. We now know that if you watch it at speed, it bypasses the conscious critical judgment factors of your prefrontal cortex, which is what usually rejects new and fresh information that you're trying to resist when the saboteur in you is keeping you in your shadow. So you've got to overcome that in order for these new, much higher frequency vibration insights that are actually being presented to you.
So in the beginning, it would be your recommendation to do the quick version.
Correct.
Yeah, that makes
Totally.
absolute sense.
Yeah.
And so why would you do the longer one?
Because as you become more comfortable with the message, it actually can resonate at a lot deeper levels, and you start to have your own insights.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So is there anything else that you, particularly would like to share that, again, might have been a waking up for you, or just a learning or a gift or anything at all?
Do you know I have gifts almost every day, right? So I wake up at a different level every day. And the reason why I think is because I'm in pursuit of a goal that is really grand. It does take my breath away sometimes. And I know there are so many more people who can benefit from it. And the reality is that for me to be on this journey means that I'm uncovering. I'm just uncovering, because that's just the way life is.
Yep.
And having said that, over the last 5 or 10 years, I've had all sorts of reproductive organ issues, several surgeries. I've had a couple of miscarriages. I can't stop life. And so I am more prepared, and even really understanding whether it was going to be possible for me to be a mother, because it's something that was very deep within my soul as a want, as a desire, as a need. And then figuring out that actually that might not be my path. That process in and of and by itself actually allowed me to connect much more deeply and authentically with people who have these long-held dreams that don't become reality, right? Yeah. I'll tell you also, in terms of waking up and standing up for myself, I employed this person who I had to let go for all sorts of reasons, and then spent 4 years in court basically fighting this individual who is probably a narcissistic sociopath, but it doesn't matter what it is, what judgment, what label. I still had to go through that process, and I ended up actually defending myself in court.
Wow.
That was horrendous, really gut-wrenching. And I was very, very, very uncomfortable. It frightened the living daylights out of me. I mean, truly. I don't know why. I was just so afraid of the entire system. Now, I won. They were actually going after my intellectual property. And it was a game to them. And interestingly enough, every single time something like this happens, I know that, and whether this is really spiritual or religious or not, I just know that it's there to serve me so that I can prepare myself for the next part of this journey, which is going to require more of me and my higher self, right?
Yeah. What is there for me to learn here?
Totally.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, you and I can tell all of your listeners they need people like us in their lives, because I didn't come to my own revelations on my own. I have so many decent coaches in my life and mentors and advisors, and I'm not afraid to discuss any of these things. And so they will give me a tiny little gem that's so precious and treasured that will cause me to actually just flip.
And see it for yourself.
Totally. Yeah. And then I can surrender and let go and so forth. So I definitely feel like I've got this, but not on my own. It's because I've got really a great group of people around me, and I'm constantly having some flexibility around that. Like, some people come into your life for a lifetime and others just to teach you a lesson and so forth. So some people who I really trust and I respect and I admire and they're really helpful, they may serve their purpose and then they may actually disappear from my life and my business life, and somebody else will appear. And I now know everybody I meet, I'm there to actually gift them something and they are there to gift me something, and it is a mutually beneficial exchange. And so I have a completely different experience of life now than I did 10 years ago.
And sometimes in that moment, we don't know what it is.
No. Often you don't know what it is.
That's what I mean, So in potentially closing, is there a gift that you would like to gift our listeners?
Absolutely. Do you know what? I want you to all receive 120 credits from Positive Prime, right? So you need to write down this referral code and use it when you go sign up. So go to positiveprime.com, positive as in the opposite of negative, prime as in first. So positiveprime.com. And when you create your free account, it'll ask for a referral code. I think that the best one for today is wake up. All one word, wake up. Okay. And that will actually gift you an additional session and 120 credits. So you go choose whatever you want from the shop. It could be anyone's. You never know. You might see someone you know have a session in our shop.
Yeah. Awesome. Sounds great. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's been eye-opening for me, even though I've known you all that time, or all this time. And hopefully it's been very eye-opening or ear-opening for the listeners today as well. And hopefully somebody has been able to wake up and realise that they have got this and that they've got everything that they need to be all that they ever want to be. And thank you, Kim Serafini.
Oh, thank you, Vickie.